Namaste and welcome to Magic Vibrations Healing School. My name is Demian Haye and today I would like to explore in depth the wound of exile. And this is part of this series of videos that I am creating to simply explore the root causes, the dynamics and the solutions that apply to different wounds. So today the wound of exile. And a lot of people are concerned with this wound because in our modern world, where a lot of us, we live in places far away from where we are born. I personally do live in Guatemala and I was born in France. So this is a subject that relates deeply to me and I can identify with it. Exile is living far away from the land where we were born, far away from our native culture, from our tradition, far away from our ancestral land, far away sometimes from our family. Exile literally comes from an old French word, exiler, which literally means to forbid or to ban or to banish. So it means originally this word was connected from a form of authority that would push us away or decide that we could not live in the place where we were, in the place where we were born. So we had to leave, right? So that gave the concept of exodus at a collective level. Entire populations that had to move away from where they were living because of war, because of occupation, because of genocide, because of, natural disasters, because of climate. And all of this is deeply rooted in our collective memory, in our genetics. As well, it can relate to displacement, right? So when we are exiled, it is admitted that we have a spiritual displacement, right? So the displacement, it's a movement, right? It's a forced movement. And this movement can create a level of disconnection from, again, our roots, from our traditions, our cultures, our ancestral land. Sometimes exile sounds like banishment. Yes, so banishment means that, again, there's this authority, which is usually a traditional, cultural, or political authority that forces us to move and to go far away. So in our modern world, we know that, through all the migrations, the movements of population due to slavery, war, again, climate crisis, then, a lot of our ancestors had to relocate, to move. Sometimes it's for economic reason. Yeah, we are born in a place where there are no resources, no work, and we move to another place to seek, political refuge for safety. Sometimes it's economic reason, so it's for money, for work. And sometimes it's just for comfort, right? So to move from the cold places to the warm places, for example, or the places that are flooded to the dry places. And sometimes, of course, exile is voluntary, right? So it means that it's an intentional movement to seek greener pastures, to seek a better place. And sometimes it's forced. We have no choice. So the wound of exile will go around the concept of displacement, banishment, and, this forced movement and this disconnection from our ancestors, from our tradition, culture, and roots. In the shamanic tradition, exile, the wound of exile, has a spiritual displacement. Well, spiritual displacement means a displacement of spirit, which is a loss of power, or sometimes a soul loss. So it means we leave a part of our consciousness, of our spirit, of our soul, of our heart in the place that we left. And it's something that we suffer from, right? Because we experience this loss of identity, this loss of vitality, this loss of love, because this is loss. So this is definitely grief. And another concept as well is that every time that people are displaced, right? So either a collective exodus or let's say a mass movement, and they arrive in a new place. Well, then the people who are native to this place, they themselves feel displaced in their own tradition, right? So for example, where I live in Guatemala, in a Mayan indigenous village, as a lot of foreigners moved in around the Lake Atitlan here in Guatemala, well, we brought our own ways, our own cultures, our own traditions. And I am pretty sure that the local native Mayan people also feel displaced and challenged in their own ways. So their sense of rooted identity is challenged by the confrontation and the interaction with other traditions, other ways. So displacement and exile creates exile wherever we are landing, wherever we arrive and we settle in the new place where we settle. Psychologically, it relates to this sense, I don't belong. I don't know where I belong. I don't belong here. I am not welcome here. I don't know where is my place. I don't know where home is. So it comes with this sense of alienation. Alienation as not feeling that we are grounded, earthed, rooted in the living earth. All right, so alienation, to my perspective, means to create an identity that cannot be rooted, therefore it cannot be composted by the earth. So it's this kind of extremely mental sense of self, so sense of identity, that is disconnected from the earth. So let's explore deeper the dynamics of the wound of exile, which again relates to displacement, exodus, banishment, being an outcast. Right? So to explore these dynamics, well, I will use, a specific map, right? And the maps is how we express the wound of exile, how we can spot that is truly something that relates to us, something that our own soul, our own sense of self is, experiencing at a deeper level. So let's start with the objectifying side of the dynamic. Yeah, so that's about control, right? So it's an overt aspect, so an aspect that is not hidden. That will look like forced exile. Yeah, so banishment. We were forced to leave our native place to go somewhere else. Slavery. Slavery will go there. So if you sense that, you come from ancestors that have been enslaved and forcefully moved to another place. I'm speaking here, for example, about all the, African population that went through the world in the 400 years of slavery to work and that today live in so many different countries. But as well, sometimes it's forced because, again, of economic reasons or climatic reasons, political reasons, religious reasons. War, of course. Yeah, so war creates refugees. Refugees are exiled people that they didn't want to leave, right? They wanted to stay, but because of war, they had to. So there is a sense sometimes where there is an authority or external reasons that force us to move, right? So this is overt, so it's kind of obvious. It's easy to sense that you're an exiled or you suffer from the wound of exile if you are a refugee of war, for example, right? Or if you're an outcast, in the sense that you were banished from your native community for whatever reasons, and you have to live somewhere else. And here it brings, the dynamic of feeling that we're a victim of injustice. We suffer sometimes humiliation. We feel that we don't belong, that we are not adequate. We sense that, we are outcast, right? So there is also the whole dynamic of cultural appropriation, right? So in the sense that when we move somewhere else, well, we will have to adopt new ways, new traditions, new cultures. And there's something forced there because to be accepted where we move, we have to change, we have to evolve, we have to adjust to the reality and the traditions, the culture in the place, from the place where we're moving in. And sometimes as well, we live somewhere, so we are native, and you have a lot of other people from other cultures and traditions coming in, and then we sense that they appropriate our culture, so it makes us feel as well displaced and exiled. And we didn't choose for these people to come in our villages and cities, but they do come here. And you can see today how it's a deep subject in many countries. Now, there is also a covert aspect to control, right, which is manipulation. So the manipulation expression of the wound of exile, well, it's about manipulating history. Yeah, so it's about, all these justifications, or it's about, the stories that we are told of why we were exiled, and, the stories that say that we were not good originally in the place, or that it was for, greater good, or, whatever stories. So sometimes our parents choose to move away, and we are born, in a place, or maybe as a young child, we moved to a new place, and then we feel that we don't belong, we feel again inadequate. And there is this whole manipulative story about justifying the movement and pretending that it's okay, and that everybody has this experience, a lot of people. And so it's not really admitting the grief and the loss of our ancestral roots and traditions. It's denying it. So if you sense in your family stories there was a denying about this exile, so this exodus movement, this maybe emigration, so you're a child of immigrants, and then the manipulation that usually connects with a lot of shame and sometimes guilt. Well, this is as well one of the expressions which is more subtle, it's more hidden, it's covered, based on manipulation of the wound of exile. And this is where sometimes you would maybe associate it with the archetype of the traitor. Yeah, so you betrayed your native place by living somewhere else. Maybe because you were not forced, or coerced to do so, but because you chose to do it for comfort, economic reasons, religious reasons. So it's not that people banished you and kicked you out, manu militari, by force, but you chose to do so, and you justify it, or your parents justify it as if there was no choice. And there is this feeling, this guilt, because we might feel that we are betraying our ancestors or our native identity in some ways. Now, the other side of the dynamics of the wound of exile, it's the deifying part, right? So that would look like competition. The competition, it expresses itself as, let's say, we go to a new place and we sense that there's a competition between the local tradition and the tradition that we carry from our roots. So we compare, we judge, we play games. Yeah. So there is this sense of competition, which again can look like cultural appropriation in some places. It can look like, speaking badly about either the culture where you arrive, or speaking badly about the culture where you come from. So again, judgments. It usually brings a sense of conflict and anger. So I'm speaking, for example, about all the young generations of immigrants arriving, in richer countries because, let's say, of their war refugees. And they have this resentment, this anger that they express. And it can express itself as violence. And there is also then the archetype, the energy there of the thief, right? Either the thief as you move intentionally to a new place and then, you settle. So it means, well, that you somehow steal a place in this cultural, map, which can be, you buy land, you settle, you get a job. So there is this energy of taking what before belonged to native people. So you're taking your part of the cake, and you might identify as a thief. Or maybe you live somewhere and you have a lot of people coming, so exiled people that come. So you have a lot of people coming, and it makes you feel as if yourself you're displaced and exiled, and in a sense feel that they are the thieves stealing your tradition, appropriating it. So if you sense this in your life, well, it's an expression of the wound of exile. And the last part, in the deifying part, would be the worshipping. So the worshipping would look like, speaking with exaggeration, either of, the lost land of Eden, so how it was good where we come from, so this longing, yearning that twists the reality and that somehow deifies or idealizes the place that we left. So the mythic indigenous land, the Garden of Eden, where, because we don't live there, we're exiled, but where everything is perfect, and today we suffer, and somehow we long and we yearn and we feel a sense of loss and grief for losing it. But this is not, really realistic. Yeah, it's a worshipping, it's a deification. It is an idealization of a dream, of a story that we are being told. Sometimes it comes through, this tendency in our world to worship indigenous cultures, right? To think that they are better because they are more rooted, more connected, less civilized in a negative way, that they are more connected to nature. So this worshipping of old indigenous ways, well, it usually means that you carry as well this wound of exile, right? And that would connect more to this energy, this archetype of the beggar, right? So you're begging to reconnect to your indigenous identity. You're begging to go back to the Holy Land, wherever you come from, to the lost Garden of Eden. So you see, this is one way to see the dynamic. If any of these aspects speaks to you, well, you probably have, to some extent, this wound of exile. It generally expresses itself in its dynamic as a disconnection from Earth, disconnection from our roots, so not being grounded. It can express itself as, being too mental, or not, really enjoying spending time in nature wherever you live and connecting to the land itself. Maybe it relates to not knowing the history of the land where you live. The stories, the weaving, the energies, the information that is held by the land itself from the past, and not to receive it and sense it and appreciate it. Energetically, it usually affects a lot the root chakra. So that will be one of the main root chakra wounds, exile, and as well our underground chakras. So our connection to the mother, our connection to the underworld, our connection to elemental forces, mineral, vegetal, animal medicines, to our ancestors. So if you don't feel at all connected with your ancestry, it's probably because in your consciousness, there is this wound of exile at play. So these are, just to give you a map of the dynamics of this wound. Now let's speak about the root causes. How this came to be, this wound of exile. Well, the wound for me, at an individual level, many times, it finds its expression in not feeling indigenous. So it means not appreciating where you come from, your roots. I am born in France, and for many years, I spoke negatively about my country, my culture. I was really happy to live somewhere else because I kind of ran away when I was, 20 years old. And today I really see the importance of appreciating and honoring where I come from, because there are beautiful things as well. And it's not only about political history and abuses, it's as well about all the richness of a culture. So to appreciate our roots and our ancestry and where we come from, this is a really important part of healing this wound. So when we don't feel indigenous, when we reject where we come from, because of whatever traumas we had, or identities, stories we're holding, well, then this wound becomes more active, and this is where it's as well it comes from an individual level. Collectively, of course, well, it comes from history, where there were so many exodus, migrations of populations, mixing blood, which is a great thing, right? People moved all around. So today you do a DNA origin test, and you will see so many different origins from all over the world, that are part of your genetic, right? Your genetic identity. So collectively, well, everybody has ancestors that have been exiled or banished, and we carry this energy within us. Now, if we would go deeper in a true shamanic sense, we would go back to a place where we displaced part of nature. We displaced rocks to build, or the best clay from one place to the other. We displaced plants, we displaced animals. And of course, we were as well nomadic. So in a nomadic way, we would, bring this energy of movement, of exodus, even if it was intentional. We would displace parts of nature, from the, let's say, natural order. We would intervene and create this displacement frequency, this grid of displacing things. And this is something we all carry in our genetic memory, even if it comes from long, long, long ago. So we all carry this, this code. It doesn't mean everyone has a triggered and active wound of exile, but we all carry the potential for it. Now let's explore the archetypes that relate to the wound of exile. It's always so interesting and fascinating to work with archetypes. So the first one that comes to my mind, well, the refugees of war. Yeah, so the refugee of war, it is an archetype. Loses everything, you have to leave your home behind. You grab whatever you can, your family. So you have this exile for safety because it's survival. So it's connected with a deep root issue, like a root chakra issue of survival. And maybe you carry this, the refugee, the one that was truly forced and coerced to move because it was really about survival. And it comes with anger and resentment towards the oppressors that, generated the war or that, forced you to go, to be exiled. Another interesting archetype is the pariah or the outcast. Feeling that, you were belonging to a tribe, to a community with specific codes, and you were banished. So you're an outcast, you're the black sheep. So if this word resonates to you, I'm a black sheep of my family. This is the outcast archetype at play, right? So it's all about banishment. It's to be a pariah. It comes with the wound of rejection. We were rejected. We were banished, sometimes humiliated. And it carries a deep wound as well of injustice and betrayal. So you see, it's all connected with other wounds as well. Another archetype would be the wanderer or the gypsy archetype. Yeah, so intentional nomad, people who move all the time. Yeah, they belong to the earth. Their roots belong to the earth. Well, if you speak with gypsies, you will understand that they were cursed. That's what their ancient stories say. They are the sons of the wind, and there is a gypsy curse, which is, this constant need and drive to move, not to settle roots anywhere. And after a while, where you settle, you have this yearning, this longing to keep on moving constantly, as if through this curse you could not, settle anywhere. So maybe that relates to you as well. Another archetype is, the colonizer. Well, for most of us, we have ancestors that moved from their countries, to other places, and they colonized the places. Yeah, or maybe we are descendants of colons, or maybe we are native, indigenous, and we are the people coming to colonize our native places. Well, the colon archetype is really strong. It's powerful. Carries usually a lot of guilt. It carries as well entitlement as part of the wound, and it's all about gentrification, appropriation. Well, as well these things to bring and impose your own views, perspectives, religions on others. Well, we're all familiar with this colon archetype. Another one will be the hobo or the homeless, right? So that's something else. It's not having a home. So you had a home and suddenly you're too poor. So you cannot afford a home. So you live in the street. So you are also, not rooted anymore in the village. You're in the street. You are homeless. So to be exiled, it's also sometimes to be homeless, because home is definitely one antidote of the wound of exile. There is another archetype, less obvious. I call it the deceiver, right? So the deceiver, well, it's a liar, right? And this comes with exile because sometimes the people who are exiled lie about where they come from because they're ashamed or because they're afraid that they would be sent back there. Sometimes there is the archetype of the imposter that comes with it. So they pretend to belong when they don't, or they pretend to play with the rules and the traditions and to fit in the local culture where they live, but inside is not an authentic participation in the culture. It's like a game, it's pretending. Yeah, so this sense, the imposter archetype can come at play with the wound of exile. And again, there is this last dynamic, it's beggar and thieves. Yeah, so sometimes when we're exiled, we have to beg to be accepted in the new place, or we come and we steal. We take, as a survival mechanism, we take our space, and then it means we take it from other people. So we're kind of stealing it in some way. So all these archetypes are at play, and maybe you identify with them. And every archetype carries, its shadow and its medicine, and as well it carries a gift. So it's up to you as well to explore the gifts of each of these archetypes if you feel that some of them resonate with you. And now to bring a more uplifting, touch, well, let's speak about solutions. So how to deal with this wound of exile. So if you identify it, if you resonate with, what was shared here, and you're like, oh, yes, it's me. I carry this wound. What can I do about it? Well, you have different things that you can do, for example. So sometimes, it's important to do a pilgrimage back to our roots, right? So to go back to the place where we were born or where our ancestors come from. Let's say you live in the United States, so maybe you feel that you're a native Texan or Californian or, wherever, but your ancestors came from probably Europe or Africa. So sometimes to go to the origin, go to the source, to the roots of your ancestors, well, making this pilgrimage, it's a way to retrieve these pieces of identity and to reconnect, right? The weaving between you and your ancestors. Because a big part in the wounding is to be disconnected from your ancestors and not to have their support, because they just don't know where you are, right? They're like, hey, where are you? Where are our living descendants? And they cannot sense you because you're living the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. So to go through a pilgrimage can help you to reconnect and retrieve these fragments of your history, of your memory, of your vitality. Another way to play, in a really playful way, yes, actually, to heal and soothe this wound of exile, well, is to understand where you come from and to, dress some days with traditional attire or, clothes from the place where you come from, so from your native place, to eat foods that your ancestors or your parents or your grandparents were cooking, to sometimes learn the language of your ancestors, or to use words, or to, have traditions, so to celebrate specific events that from your native place, to just keep this connection to the tradition, to the culture, to the roots, to your ancestors. So even if you just do a little bit, it's part of honoring where you come from, which makes you feel more indigenous, because you know where you come from. And when you're more indigenous, well, it's easier to settle and to live anywhere in the world. Of course, there is a big part in honoring your ancestors. So, all the ancestral work of having an ancestral altar, speaking, communicating with your ancestors, making offerings, healing your ancestral lineages, asking them for guidance. I do have a healing course, online course, only designed for ancestral healing, and it's a really powerful work. So that would definitely help as well with healing the wound of exile. Another idea, well, I like it's called crest magic. So crest magic. So the crest was this design It was this symbol or a set of symbols and words that would describe your lineage, right? So where you come from. So the crest, would be, maybe on a shield or a kind of a design that would represent your family values. Sometimes it would come with some words, strength, courage, truth. Sometimes it would come with some animals or some colors or some specific symbols. Well, to reconnect to the crest of your ancestors, if maybe in your family you had a specific one, and if you can find through your surname what was the crest, well, and to work with this crest, to draw it, to bring it back home, to meditate with it, that will help you as well to reconnect with your ancestral roots, with where you come from. Of course, it's a lot about feeling indigenous again. So it's about truly appreciating where you come from, finding the gold there. Even if you have resentment, even if you would not like to leave where you come from, still to appreciate all the good things that were transmitted from your ancestors, from this specific culture. The gifts, the talents, the unique, offerings that came through your culture, your native, tradition and culture. Of course, it brought beautiful things. So to honor that and to appreciate that. I'm not saying that you have to be proud, to be, I don't know, for me proud to be French or proud to be from the country where you're born, but at least to genuinely appreciate and honor that there are nuggets of gold. There is beauty there. There is love there. Without your ancestors, you would not be here. And this tradition, well, you carry it in your own energetic field. So it created you in some way. Even if you're in reaction with it, still to appreciate the parts that you can, so that you can somehow feel that you belong, that you know where you come from. If you start to really feel, I know where I come from, then one day you will be able to feel, I belong here. And I think that, it's a really necessary correlation to know and appreciate where I come from, to today say, truly, I belong here. And that's, the last piece. It's the frequency of home. You want to feel home. The exile longs for home. But what is home? Home is not necessarily a house. It's not necessarily the land where you were born. Home, well, first, it's a village. It means it's a community. It's a healthy, dependent connection, interaction with other people, to have all the needs covered of, interdependence, helping each other, supporting each other, sharing, moments, cultures, food, tradition, land, language, right? So to feel home, well, you need to find this frequency. It's a really specific frequency. And this frequency of home, well, some people have it, and usually the people who have a deep wound of exile, they don't have it. And it's really hard to find it straight. It's not a frequency you can grab and bring to your field, right? You have to go step by step. So sometimes you have first to connect to nature, sometimes to self-love, and then to work with more community and service before to truly access this frequency of home. But truly, this is what we are looking for. And this is a frequency. The saying say, home is where the heart is. I heard recently another Sufi saying that says, home is the place where you feel that you don't need to escape anymore. I find it really interesting. So home, it's a lot of things, and it will probably be the subject of, another video, but this is the path, right? The roadmap. If you can find the frequency of home, if you can, navigate towards the frequency of home, and you feel that you're doing, positive, constructive steps to hold more this frequency of home, well, you are doing well in the healing of your wound of exile. And your ancestor will rejoice, because it's as well really important, this part. When we're exiled, our ancestors are disconnected from us, so we cannot support them, they cannot support us. And when we start to mend these connections, we start to reconnect where we come from, wherever we live, well, then there is a bridge that allows love and healing and support and guidance to come into our life. And this is where we start to feel more and more home, when we start to feel more and more adequate in the place where we live. This is where we start to feel that finally we belong. So I hope that, this exploration of the wound of exile brought some, more awareness to you. Maybe it brought new perspectives, new understandings. Well, really soon I will hold a group healing session with a grid that I designed specifically to work on this wound. And so you can attend live, or if you watch this video later, well, know that the recording of this healing session will be available. You simply can check on my website www.magicvibrationshealing.com. Thank you.